Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. Let's skip the introductions, because that's exactly what she did to me. The steak was cold, the wine untouched, and my wife hadn't said a single word to me in over 2 hours. That would have been fine if it wasn't my celebration. A private room at Hawthorne and Pine, dimmed lighting, custom place cards with my name embossed in silver. The partners called it Dorian's Night. I called it a test. And Elise? She called it just another work thing. She wasn't wrong. Except this work thing was the biggest milestone in my career. I had landed a contract we'd been chasing for 6 quarters. They flew the client in. The CEO made a toast. The head of HR patted me on the back like I'd just won us a war. I should have felt proud. But I couldn't stop watching Elise fake laugh at jokes from men she'd never cared for. She sat 2 seats away from me, close enough to hear my voice, far enough to ignore it. Every time I tried to catch her eye, she glanced through me like I was a waiter. No, like I was a stranger standing between her and something she really wanted. Maybe I should have expected it. On the way to the restaurant, she criticized my shirt for wrinkling when I sat. At the valet, she scrolled through her phone instead of grabbing my hand. And when the maitre d' said, "You must be the wife of the guest of honor," she just said, "I guess." I spent most of the dinner nodding at compliments and pretending I didn't feel like a third wheel in my own marriage. Then dessert came. I excused myself. No one noticed, especially not her. But I didn't leave the building. I circled around to the coat check hallway and took the side stairs up to the balcony that overlooked the private room through a narrow glass wall. I just wanted a moment, a breath, a quiet place to feel the weight of what I'd been ignoring for months. And from up there, I saw something that snapped me out of my denial like a slap. She thought I had left. She stood up, smoothed her dress, walked over to Emery. Yes, that Emery, the same guy whose email signature includes motivational quotes and who once referred to me as accounting's background guy, and whispered something that made him grin. He followed her, out of the dining room, down the same hallway I had just walked. My wife, my night. And suddenly, I didn't feel like the guest of honor. I felt like the guy who just watched his world shift behind his back, again. But trust me, what happened next? You're not ready. I stayed in that narrow hallway by the service elevator. The kind staff used to bring out trays and clear dishes unnoticed. It was dimly lit, just far enough from the main floor that no one would see me unless they were looking, and why would they? I wasn't the one anyone was paying attention to. Not tonight. Not even her. I heard her heels before I saw them. Click, click, click. Slow and purposeful. Elise's walk always had a rhythm when she was up to something. Not nervous. Not unsure. Confident. Like she was chasing something she believed she deserved. Emery's steps followed shortly after. Lighter, almost casual, like this was just part of the game. He didn't even try to hide it. They passed within 6 feet of me without a glance. They didn't expect anyone to be there. They definitely didn't expect me. Elise was laughing softly at something he said. One of those laughs that sounded rehearsed, overpolished. I hadn't heard her laugh like that at home in months. They stopped at the end of the hall, near the emergency stairwell. There was a small nook just out of view of the cameras, and I knew it because Elise and I had once shared a kiss there years ago, when we were still just dating and thought sneaking away from a party was romantic, not suspicious. This time, she wasn't with me. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough. He's probably already gone. He hates staying late. Don't feel bad. He barely looked at you all night anyway. I needed to breathe, Em. I can't keep doing the proud wife thing. I froze. Not because of what she said, but because of how easily it left her lips. Like it wasn't a confession. Like it was routine. Then it happened. She reached for him. Not innocently. Her hand slid under his blazer, resting on his chest. He didn't resist. He leaned in, and their foreheads touched briefly, like something out of a movie that makes you feel both warm and sick at once. She looked up at him with that soft, deliberate gaze, the one I used to think was just for me. I wanted to walk away, but I couldn't, because deep down, I needed to know how far it would go. And it did go further. His hand slipped behind her waist, pulling her closer. She whispered something I couldn't catch, and he nodded. Then they turned together, heading up the stairwell. They were going upstairs, to the rooms. That's when I felt my throat tighten, not from shock, but from the slow, crawling confirmation that this wasn't a moment of weakness. It was planned, calculated, expected. She wore the dress I bought her for our anniversary. She smiled at another man using the same expressions she once reserved for our late-night car rides. And I was standing next to the storage closet like a forgotten coat. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even stop them. Instead, I walked calmly back to the event room, sat back in my seat, poured myself a glass of her untouched wine, and smiled. Because if she thought I was gone, then what happened next would hit harder than anything I could say. I sat there, drinking her wine, watching people swirl around me in warm laughter and light clinking of glasses. The kind of background noise that drowns out everything, except your own thoughts. No one noticed I had returned, which somehow made everything worse. This was supposed to be my celebration, and yet, I could have been anyone sitting in that chair. A +1. A ghost. A man who had just watched his wife walk upstairs with another man and came back like nothing had happened. I kept glancing at the time. 14 minutes. That's how long she was gone. 14 minutes before I saw her walk back in, alone, with her lipstick slightly smudged and her hair tucked neatly behind her ear like she had just reset herself in the mirror. She scanned the room and hesitated, just for a second, when she saw me sitting there. I met her eyes, and I smiled. I smiled. I wanted her to think I knew nothing. I wanted her to wonder, was I too naive to suspect? Too trusting to question her absence? Or was I slowly putting the pieces together? She walked over and leaned down to kiss my cheek. The kind of peck that's more routine than affection. She whispered, "Sorry, I had to take a call." I nodded like a fool and said, "Of course." And then, like a twisted magic trick, she sat beside me and started talking to the couple across the table about weekend brunch spots, as if nothing happened. The whole time, I kept replaying that moment in the hallway. The way she looked at him, the way he looked at her. And I realized something I hadn't before, not just that they'd done this before, but that they were comfortable doing it. This wasn't a risk. This wasn't a fling. This was muscle memory. But here's where it gets interesting. Later that night, when the party wrapped up, everyone began saying their goodbyes and shaking hands. I stayed behind just a little longer, on purpose. Elise went ahead to get our coats. I walked over to Emery, who was joking with two interns by the dessert table. I stood silently behind him for a moment. Then, as he turned, I caught him off guard with a smile and a handshake. I said, "Thanks for taking care of Elise tonight. She mentioned you kept her company." His face twitched, just enough for me to know I'd struck something. "Oh, yeah," he stammered. She seemed a bit out of place. "Don't we all sometimes?" I replied, still smiling. And then I leaned in and whispered just loud enough, "By the way, I hope you tipped housekeeping." He blinked. His jaw tightened. That was enough for me. Elise didn't ask why I was smiling in the car ride home. She just looked out the window, humming to the radio, as if she hadn't shattered the version of me that still believed she was mine. But something shifted that night. And not just between us. Because I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I wasn't going to yell or throw plates or demand answers. No. I was going to do the one thing she never expected from me. Plan. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a minute. I laid in bed next to Elise, listening to the soft rhythm of her breath as if nothing had happened. But every inhale she took felt like another nail in the coffin of who I used to be. She looked so peaceful, like someone who hadn't betrayed their husband in a stairwell less than 6 hours ago. That part made it worse. How easy it was for her to forget. Meanwhile, I kept replaying every detail of the evening. Her voice, his hand, the smirk on her face when she thought I was gone. That little smirk kept flashing in my mind like a glitch. You know when you've looked at something for years and then suddenly realize you never really saw it? That was me with Elise. I hadn't been married to her. I'd been orbiting around someone I didn't understand anymore. The next morning, she made coffee like she always did. She even made my coffee, the way I like it, 2 sugars, splash of oat milk. She hummed as she placed it on the table beside me. "You okay?" she asked, pretending concern. I nodded like a puppet. I even smiled, just a little, to keep her off balance. But something in her changed, too. Maybe she felt it. Maybe she could sense I wasn't entirely playing the fool anymore. She tried harder that day. She stayed closer, laughed at my dumb jokes again, kissed me on the forehead when I passed by her in the hallway. That used to mean something. Now it felt like camouflage. So I did something she didn't expect. I sent a message to my firm's IT department. Casual. Nothing formal. Just asked if there had been any complaints or rumors about Emery. I framed it like a mentoring concern. Said I wanted to keep tabs on the younger hires and ensure they were fitting in well. It wasn't suspicious. I've always been the helpful guy. The guy who checks in. The guy nobody sees coming. Later that evening, I also started digging through our shared digital calendar. Elise had been sloppy. There were recurring consultation meetings every Thursday that didn't match anything in her work schedule. Same time. Same vague location listed as offsite. I checked her synced notes. Buried inside a folder called Wellness was a reminder, same room. Emery handles payment. That made my hands shake. It wasn't just cheating. It was methodical, pre-booked, paid for. She came home that night humming again, dropped her purse on the counter, and asked if I wanted to watch something together. I said sure. But inside, I was already gone. I was already building a version of myself that didn't need her anymore. I was already collecting facts. You see, she thought she was playing chess with a pawn. She didn't realize I had flipped the board. For the next 2 weeks, I became the most agreeable husband you could imagine. I complimented her new haircut. Even though I knew she got it the same day, she worked late again. I picked up her dry cleaning. I brought home her favorite overpriced yogurt from that organic place she loves. I even offered to drive her to one of her wellness appointments, just to watch the panic flicker in her eyes. She declined, of course, muttering something about client confidentiality and how I'd just be bored. I told her I understood. I always do. But behind the scenes, I wasn't the same man. I had started collecting evidence, yes, but it was more than that. I was watching how effortlessly she could perform affection, how quickly she shifted masks depending on what version of me she thought she was facing. Her ability to flip between wife and stranger was something I used to excuse as stress. Not anymore. I'd also begun meeting with a lawyer, not for divorce, not yet. I just wanted to understand the rules of the game before I started playing mine. We talked about marital assets, about surveillance laws, about timing. He asked if I wanted to catch her in the act or walk away clean. I told him I hadn't decided, but I knew I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity. The turning point came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. That same Thursday, she always worked late. I was sitting in my car across from a boutique hotel just outside the city, the kind with fancy lighting and no signage, discreet by design. Her car was already there. Emery's too. I had followed her from our house, for cars back, heart in my throat the whole way even though I already knew where it would end. There's something about seeing it, though. Seeing the lie drive away from your shared driveway and park like it belongs somewhere else. I didn't go in. I didn't take pictures. I didn't need them. What I needed was something else entirely. I needed to know how far I was willing to let this go. After an hour, they both came out. Separate cars. Different exits. A script they clearly knew well. Elise didn't even glance around. She was too comfortable, too deep into this world she thought I'd never find. That night, she came home humming again. She said traffic was awful, then asked if I wanted to order Thai. I told her yes. I even rubbed her shoulders while she placed the order. She leaned into me and said, "You've been so sweet lately, Dorian. It's nice." I kissed her cheek and whispered, "You have no idea." Because what she didn't know was that I'd already packed a bag. I had already moved half of my savings into a private account. I had copies of everything: messages, transactions, calendar entries. I wasn't planning to explode. I was planning to vanish. But before I could make my final move, something unexpected happened. She slipped. She forgot to delete one of her hotel confirmations from our shared inbox. It was for the next Thursday. Same place, same time. And this time, I wouldn't just be watching. The following Thursday felt strangely quiet. Elise was in a particularly chipper mood that morning, spinning around the kitchen like she was living inside a commercial. She wore one of her best blouses, the silk one I'd bought her in Seattle 2 anniversaries ago. Her makeup was subtle, flawless, and somehow colder than usual. She kissed me lightly and said she'd be home a bit late. Big meeting downtown. I nodded, wished her luck, and even held the door open as she walked out. Then I stood there for a long time, staring at the closed door, wondering how many times I'd opened it for a stranger. I already knew where she was going. That hotel confirmation she forgot to delete was still sitting in our shared inbox, like a trap she accidentally laid for herself. Room 304. Check in at 3 p.m. Under the name E. Rivers. Cute. At least she wasn't sloppy with his name. I parked across from the hotel at 2:55 p.m. sharp. I didn't want to risk seeing them enter together. I didn't need another visual I couldn't unsee. Instead, I waited. 30 minutes. An hour. At 4:17 p.m., I saw her walk out. Alone. Hair slightly messy. That blouse. Looser around the collar now. Her lips? Not smudged, but freshly reapplied. I didn't follow her this time. I had what I came for. I called the front desk the moment she drove off and asked for room 304. Said I had the wrong room and pretended to be flustered. Oh, sorry, I thought this was my boss's line. The woman chuckled politely and said, "Oh, no worries, sir. Ms. Rivers just checked out." Confirmation. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was oddly calm. That scared me more than anything. Because if you knew me, the real me, you'd know I used to be the kind of guy who cried during Pixar movies, who got anxious over unanswered texts, who once spent 30 minutes apologizing for forgetting to buy almond milk. But this version of me, he wasn't crying. He was calculating. When Elise came home later, she was buzzing, talking about some imaginary pitch, how she nailed it in front of the board. I watched her invent details in real time. Her hands even mimicked holding a laser pointer. She mentioned a colleague who doesn't exist and a slideshow that never happened. I nodded, asked a few follow-up questions just to see how deep she'd dig the hole. She never missed a beat. That night, I couldn't sleep again. Not from restlessness, but from clarity. Everything felt clean. Final. And that's when I decided something I never thought I'd do. I would give her one last chance. Not to confess, not to explain. No, she didn't deserve that. I would give her a chance to choose, without realizing she was choosing at all. I planned a fake dinner reservation for the following Thursday. A reservation that didn't exist. I told her I had a surprise lined up, something special for us. Just her and me. No distractions. She smiled, tight-lipped, and said she'd check her schedule. I already knew what her schedule said. This was her final move. Her final test. And for once, I wasn't going to be the one left waiting. Thursday arrived with unsettling stillness. It wasn't stormy or dramatic, just quiet. I had set everything in place. A fake dinner reservation at a non-existent restaurant called Barlow and Finch, which I had made up using a combination of names from our old neighborhood. I sent her the name, the fake address, even a fake confirmation email from a burner account I created. It looked real enough, just like her lies. That morning, I left a note on the kitchen counter. Nothing poetic, just, "Can't wait to finally have a night that's just us. 7:30, I'll be there early." I signed it like I used to in our early years, with a little heart drawn next to my name. She used to smile at those. This time, she didn't even mention it. She texted me around noon. "Sounds nice. I'll be there." I knew she wouldn't. By 6 p.m., I was already parked in the lot across from the same boutique hotel. I wasn't even anxious this time, just methodical. Her car pulled up at 6:47. Not late, not early, right on schedule. She was dressed in a pale gray dress I hadn't seen in months. The one she always said was too much for casual nights with me. She didn't hesitate. No phone calls. No looking around. She walked in like a regular. It was 7:12 when he showed up. Emery, button down half untucked, jacket slung over his shoulder. Not a care in the world. He barely looked both ways crossing the street. When he entered the hotel, I didn't feel rage. I felt confirmation. And so, while they were upstairs doing what they thought I'd never find out about, I parked her betrayal into motion. I went home. Her closet, half of it was already packed. I didn't touch her things. I didn't throw anything. I simply laid a manila envelope on her side of the bed. Inside was everything. Printed screenshots, location data, timestamps, hotel check-in confirmations, a copy of her wellness calendar entries, and a short letter in my handwriting. It read, "I know. I've known. For a while now. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I watched. And you failed every chance to stop. This was your final one. And you still didn't show up. You didn't even hesitate." I signed it simply with my name, no heart this time. Then I disconnected our shared accounts. Froze our joint credit cards. Moved my essentials into storage. I left my ring in the sink, exactly where she always complained I forgot to put it back on. At 9:08 p.m., she called me. I didn't answer. At 9:12, another call. 9:14, a text. "Where are you?" I read it, then turned off the phone. I didn't want to hear her panic. I didn't want her tears. She'd always been good at shifting tones, at switching from dismissive to devastated in under a minute. I didn't want to give her the chance this time. She had made a choice. And now, so had I. She must have thought I'd come back, that I was being dramatic, that I'd eventually call, demand an apology, ask for the truth, and beg her to stay. But that's not who I am anymore. When Elise walked into our house that night, she walked into silence. No lights on. No scent of my coffee lingering in the kitchen. No familiar sound of my keyboard clacking in the study. Just the envelope on the bed and a closet with nothing on the left side. She called. Again and again. Her voicemails shifted quickly, starting with confusion, sliding into guilt, then desperation. The last one was just her crying softly, asking me to call her, saying she didn't mean for things to go this far. But it had gone far. And she'd chosen that path, one lie at a time. I spent the next few nights at a friend's place. Then I moved into a small apartment on the other side of the city. It's not much, no view, no fancy furniture, but it's mine. It's quiet and honest. That's a kind of luxury I hadn't known I was missing. I filed for divorce 2 weeks later. No long messages. No confrontation. Just paperwork. I attached a copy of the letter I had left on the bed, so she'd know exactly why. Oddly enough, I didn't feel broken. I felt released. It wasn't just about her cheating. It was about me finally seeing myself. The man who always forgave too quickly, who swallowed his questions to keep the peace, who made himself smaller so she could feel bigger. I stopped doing that. And you know what surprised me the most? I started smiling again. Not because I'd moved on to someone else, but because I'd finally moved back to myself. These days, I take long walks. I joined a book club. I even started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. I found pieces of myself in quiet corners of my life I forgot existed. Elise sent me one last message a month ago. You never even gave me a chance to explain. I didn't respond. She explained everything the moment she didn't show up. Thanks for sticking with me through this story. If you've ever experienced betrayal or a quiet moment that changed everything, drop your story in the comments. Or just tell us about a moment in history where someone finally chose themselves. Those stories deserve to be heard too. You've been watching Reddit Confessions. Until next time, choose truth, even when it hurts.